What's good, y'all? What's good? What's good? What's good? Welcome to Outside the Clutch. This is round 2 for this weekend, so we're about to liven it up a little bit, have some fun. Um, Tonight's going to be kind of a special one. So I had his co-host on, and our guest tonight. We've talked a couple of times. We haven't really got to talk as much as we liked, and I said, well, I freaking brought Nathan on. I got to do this guy right and give him the respect that's owed, and I got to bring Lucas on as well, right? Like if we're talking retics, so you guys know I've been getting back into retics. I think it's only right that both the co-hosts from the Retic Lounge come on, and so we're gonna bring Lucas on here in a second. But first, I want to just say hi and what's up, and we're gonna get rolling. Mindy, what's up? Hope everyone is enjoying that NARBC St. Louis right now. I'm getting pictures from my friends like, hey, we got a reserved table this time. Haha, you're not here. It's a running joke with me and a couple of friends. Like I won't reserve a table, but people invite me to the table every now and then. The only time I think I had a reserved table was when we did that fight between me and Antoine. And obviously, because it was for USARK, they gave us a table. But anyways, I hope everyone's enjoying the NARBC. I freaking love those shows. I'm hoping to do a complete circuit next year. I got to plan it out, obviously, with 2 shows for each of those. We're hoping to hit those, as well as a couple of others throughout the year. But yeah. So Mindy, sis, thanks for joining from St. Louis. Will, what's up, my man? You're on every freaking podcast. Like you're all over the place. Proud of you. Proud of you. Keep up the way that you support. Keep up with the good vibe, man. Like I've been watching what you do on social media. Really enjoying it. Jay Hill Jr., what's going on? Thanks for stopping in. Jamie, my girl. Oh man, freaking, I love Jamie. If y'all didn't watch their where are they now? 15 minutes of lame. This is my class of 15 minutes of lame. She was one of the first ones to do it. Go check her out. Go check out Snakes and the Fat Man, Chris over there. Dylan from D's Balls and Exotics. What's good? What's good? And Miss Lindsay, how you doing from Pico Pythons? Thanks for stopping in. All right, so we're gonna jump in as people come in. Hey, make sure you say hi. Make sure you're giving this a like. Hit the subscribe down below. Hit that bell so that you can be notified for all of our videos. I 100% am all about giving our animals the best life that we can, right? And that starts with husbandry, and you guys know that I'm very avid, and I'm I'm really I could dive in pretty passionately about some of the husbandry practices that we have within this industry because I saw them as a young man working in the industry at a pet store to where it's progressed now. So we wouldn't be able to do this show. Well, we would, but I wouldn't be able to contribute the way that I do without the people that support me. And so I want to give that shout out to our sponsors and focus on that husbandry life. Here at Outside the Clutch, we're honored to be sponsored by VivTech. Are you ready for innovation? Tired of the same boring product that's been used for 30 years? Ready to give your reptiles and amphibians the UV they really deserve? Then look no farther than VivTech. Their 3-watt LED bulbs provide the UV rays your animals have been missing. With 3 bulbs to fit your pet's climate needs, plus a dimmable feature, it's the only bulbs we use for UV. And it's the only bulb with a 2-year warranty in the industry. Plus now you can monitor all your pet's husbandry from your phone 24/7 with their sensors and even ship your customers' animals in their custom bags. So what are you waiting for? Go to VivTechProducts.com today, use code FCLUTCH0322 for 15% off, and provide your animals the best care they've ever had. So we're talking about go get your bulbs. So they're doing all kinds of tests right now, seeing how UVB, UVA affect reptiles, whether we thought that it was required or not. We're seeing there's a lot of different interaction in your animals based off of these bulbs and them getting the right amount of UV rays as they would receive in the wild. So make sure you check that out. Use that code. All proceeds from that code actually go right back to USARK. So that's how we support USARK. I don't take any money from my sponsors. All that money from my sponsors goes to support USARK. And you guys know I've been an avid supporter of ReptiChip since I started. I've used it. That was the first real coconut substrate that I got on, and me and JT, we hit it off as veterans. And man, I can't say enough about it. But you know, I'm all about that chip life.
Are you ready for the best coconut substrate in the game? Then you gotta get ReptiChip. First off, it's America's chip because it's veteran owned. Secondly, why wouldn't you want the best cocoa chip for your animals? Go to reptichip.com, use code FEELYCHIPPIN for 10% off up to 3 breeder blocks, or your entire order of Easy Hatch trays or any Redline Science equipment on the site. Limit 1 coupon per customer. Or reach out to me as a representative in the El Paso area, and don't forget to join the Reptilution, where all profits go to helping those in need within the reptile community.
And finally, we got to talk about Mickey and the Show Me Snake show. I mean, this dude, he does it all. I can't believe the amount of shows this dude puts on. Venom Fest just happened. Let me see. Give me just a second. So this weekend, actually today, they're doing a Springfield, Missouri, along with Loveland, Colorado. Like, they're doing multiple shows in a weekend. They're also in Groveton, Georgia. Like, next weekend, they're gonna have one in Kentucky, and then they're starting the Southern down in Tulsa, Oklahoma. So they're gonna hit down in the South again, and then go back up to Missouri. Like, they put on multiple shows a weekend. They do so much. I'm really enjoying that venue of shows. Like, Mickey does an excellent freaking job. I really like what he does. I like how hard he works. And it's people like that I want to surround myself with. So I was extremely freaking happy when he decided to come on as a sponsor. But anyways, I've been going on for a little while. This man, I don't want to keep him in the green room for too long. We're going to lose all that energy that we've been building up before this. So I'm going to bring on our guest tonight. So put your hands together. Give this man some love, Mr. Lucas Bagnara of Lab Exotics. I freaking love stupid sound.
The nice little clapping. Did I hear that? I thought I heard that. That's awesome.
I don't know. I just like to play with them, dude. Like, I'm still figuring out this whole roadcaster and things like that. And it comes, man. It comes. But
yeah, me and Nathan have been too scared to play with it in our live setup during our
just so you could do up to, I think, 16 or 32, something like that. I forget how many sounds you can do. So I'm gonna eventually like bring sounds down, and like this is gonna go way more intricate than I've ever done before. Like,
nice. I'm excited.
Finally put a background on it after a year. But yeah, man. Like, so how are you doing? I'm excited to jump into this. We talked a little bit at Arlington, and we've talked back and forth about your podcast, and just kind of getting to know each other over the last few months. But how are you doing, man? How's life as a RETIC keeper?
I'm doing good, man. Excited to be here. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, man, this weekend's been good. Happy Veterans Day weekend. I know I told you over text, but can't say it more than enough. Thanks for your service. But yeah, hanging in there. RETIC keeping is RETIC keeping, man. And I'm in the garage every day working with them all the time. You know, wife will text me and she's like, "Are you cleaning snakes?" And I'm like, "You know it. If I'm not anywhere in the house, she knows I'm in the garage." So
that's a good problem to have. It's a lot better than some of the things that people do.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, so give us a little history about you. So I made kind of a pun for those that looked in the description. I don't know if Lucas saw it or anyone else saw it, but I put a little pun towards one of his hobbies in his past by calling this the second game of the doubleheader.
Yep.
And so he
Yeah.
was a big baseball guy.
Yeah, man. Baseball is still got a very special place in my heart. Got the opportunity to play college ball, and that was great. Finished playing college baseball. What was my senior year of college? That was 2015. Yeah, 2015. Now I'm only 29. I'm turning 30 in December. So I'm still pretty young. Once I hit 30, I won't call myself young anymore.
I don't want to hear that.
Yeah, but I mean, a little about me. Man, I've been keeping snakes since I was a kid. Anywhere from ball pythons. I had really cool parents that let me own crazy species at the time. I was living in Miami, and so snakes on Sunset, they're still pretty big. You know, they were importing a lot of things. So I was like 10 years old when my parents let me get a berm. I had an Argentine boa growing up, carpet pythons, ball pythons, and then I went on and played ball in college. And so in 2011, I rehomed my animals and didn't get another snake until 2018. And in between that time, 2018 and 2011, I was just obsessed with retics, looking everything into them. And I came across a post over in the UK on the snakes.com forums back in the day, um, about a Honey Island retic. And that's when this epiphany came to my awareness of super dwarfs and these smaller locality retics. So I went straight in with my first retic being a pure Kadiwadi. And yeah, it was awesome. I had the opportunity to own a super dwarf. It was an F1. It was kind of everything that I wanted. And
Oh man, that's right out of the what?
yeah, exactly. And you know, she's actually pretty great. She more is like a leave me alone snake, but she's a sweetheart. I just posted a reel of her today of just cruising around after cleaning. She's super curious, but yeah, so she actually has her eggs gonna hatch in probably a couple weeks. So it's nice to go full circle. I got her when she was only 3 months old, and finally she's having her first clutch with me. So that's a really, really good feeling.
Heck yeah, man. Heck yeah. So as far as your experience, you've got it scattered a little bit, but you have a few years under your belt. It's fair to say.
Yeah, I mean, and don't get me wrong, like growing up, like as a kid, like did not keep snakes the way that they like, you know, glass aquariums with the sticky heat pads and no thermostat.
Well, at
And
least you did that, man. Like
right, I
I
even
know
had
a
a
lot
heat
of people
rock.
that did the heat rocks and like didn't put that on a thermostat and just why did my snake freaking fry on this?
Right. No,
Like,
man, I had some things happen as a kid growing up, kind of those learning curves. But yeah, I mean, I'm still very new at like my experience with owning retics because again, it's only been 4.5, close to 5 years. But like I said, I've been an active part in the uh, Facebook forums and all these different things and reading upon them for years now. Nothing beats experience, that's for sure. But I was one of those that the time that I got rid of my last snake going into college, until 2018, all I did was watch videos and learn about retics. So I was well informed before I got my first one.
nice. And where'd you play your college ball?
Yeah, I saw Todd ask that. Todd, what's going on? So I spent my first 2 years at a junior college at a JUCO in Florida, playing for South Florida State College. I got to play against people like Lance McCullers, who's a starter right now for Houston Astros. He was a closing pitcher for them. I'm going to brag about myself. I went 7 for 8 career off of him and hit a line drive back at his finger and broke it his sophomore year. Um, and then I went on and played at a 4-year college after that at University of the Cumberlands up in Kentucky. It's a D1 NAIA school. Had a blast playing there. It's a beautiful campus in the middle of the Cumberland Mountain range. So, yeah, I had probably some of the best times of my life playing ball. That's where I met my wife. My wife played volleyball in college. So we met in college there. And so that those 4 years were, you know, everything to me. If I could go back and play another year, I definitely would do it. And
You
the
wish
fact
you had
that
redshirted, huh?
Yeah, no, man, probably if I went back just the way that I am right now to go play, oof, that would not look good. I'd probably pull a hammy my first line drive.
I don't I miss those days for sure. Like I wasn't like a collegiate athlete. Um I couldn't I couldn't hone my skills in on one sport. Like I like too many things. So I was a three sport athlete all of high school and
Yeah,
I couldn't focus enough to like I could make it to state for like track and for swimming. And then for football, we'd make it to the state playoffs every year when I was in high school, but we just man, we did not have the talent around us to put it together. Like we got a couple of championships before I was in there, and then I think we win my junior year in high school. We went to the championship for state, and man, there's a lot of good athletes that came out of the state. That's the issue.
yeah.
Um,
I can thank my high school coach because I played soccer and I played soccer and I played football. And my freshman year, my coach, my baseball coach told me like you need to drop soccer your sophomore year because it falls into baseball season. And so I dropped it. And then my sophomore year playing football had a little MCL sprain. And he told me, he's like, listen, I'm gonna be honest with you. If you don't stop playing football, I'm probably not gonna start you this year. And I was like, all right, enough said. So really, like in hindsight, I was pissed. I hated him, didn't like it. But at the end of the day, he
he set you up for success.
yeah, exactly. And I mean, I was fortunate enough where the high school I went to, Sarasota High School, they're known nationally. They've won several state championships, national championships. And so baseball is no joke where I'm from. We're talking about Friday night lights at a high school place. High school in Florida is not like high school sports here in Texas, or at least in San Antonio, where you have like these stadiums outside of like, no. This was like at our high school baseball field where we would have 750 to 1,000 people watching these games. It was no joke.
So what was the hardest part like in college for you? Because high school ball is one thing. College ball and like the mentality of okay, can I take it past this is another thing.
Honestly, you want to know the hardest part?
Yeah.
Was waking up with a hangover and going to a game at 9 in the morning. um, that was not easy, but in reality, so the difference that sets people apart from the high school to the college level and then beyond that, it really talent means a lot, obviously, but if you have the skill set, what really is make or break is a mentality in baseball. So baseball is a 90% mental game, in my opinion. Every single pitch, every at bat, everything is just a mental game. If you're not in the pitcher's head, the pitcher's in your head, vice versa. So it was definitely the mentality could be hard in a college season where you start to play 70 games. You got to be able to take the downs, go on those slumps and ride them out and not be too hard on yourself, because if you were hard on yourself, you'd never get out of those slumps.
So the mentality was already there before you got into snakes.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Just,
what we got out of that.
just got to be dialed in, man. Got to be dialed in.
All right. Heck yeah, man. So let's jump into the snakes a little bit. How many do we have in the collection right now?
So right now in my garage, I have 21 animals. 2 of them are not mine. I have 2 animals on breeding loan. One's from Eric Lee, who I'm actually going to be sending back, and then the other is from Rodney. I have a mainland tiger female that's 100% het Indo caramel, and I'm taking my ocelot 66 pos het Indo caramel. So hopefully I can hit a country's first visual Indo caramel 100% het ocelot. So that's the only mainland pairing that I plan to do, just solely mainland. And it basically, it's the only reason is to try to prove that's ocelot het Indo, because if he's het Indo, that changes my entire game plan for Super Dwarf stuff. I'm going to have to get snow females to make some orange glows, Anery orange glow ocelots. So a lot in the works there.
In and of itself, man, is
it's beautiful. Yeah, it's my favorite morph.
It's ridiculous. No, I heard you the other night. No, don't go there. you're obligated to say it's your favorite morph now.
Aubrey Pruitt maybe sign a paper. No. So yeah, I mean it's a hard discussion, and it's a hard thing to decide between Hypo and Ocelot. But I mean, Ocelot genuinely is my favorite. The reason why I was originally going to go with Hypo was because of affordability. You know, a Hypo animal is 8,500 versus an Ocelot that's 15K. And so when you look at the beauty of both and you weigh out those price differences, it's like, I'm going to go Hypo. But no one produced visuals for like a year and a half that I was looking, and I was offering people insane amount of monies for their males that they had. And so no one was budging. And then I ran into DNT Retics at a show that had some of Aubrey's animals, and he's like, hey, I could talk to Aubrey for you. I can hook you up with a deal. And I was like, let's talk. And then I talked to Aubrey, and Aubrey hooked it up, and can't thank Aubrey enough for all the support and help with that.
All right, man. So let's jump into your thought process. We're gonna get a little heated tonight. This is gonna be something where we're not just talking about Lucas's collection, but we're also going to be talking about like husbandry and locality versus morphs, and we're going to dive into them a little bit harder than his co-host was willing to. His co-host lit him off a little easy, y'all. So we're going to get him. So husbandry, man. Husbandry is a topic that can be rather well, let's just say it plainly,
neglected
within the retic world, because people are very much set in their ways and they don't want to hear that they're wrong. So for those people coming in, let's talk about what you would set your retics at for those that are interested in retics, and then let's talk about the many different avenues that one could take to set up a retic, because let's face it, these animals are very much, while we say ball pythons are hard to kill, retics are very, very stubborn, and they're able to handle a lot, much more than we should put them through.
Yeah, they're super hardy animals, and yeah, that's a very good point. I mean, you can definitely neglect a retic and get away with it. I mean, just look at how a lot of people kept their retics in the 90s and early 2000s, and for the most part, and I hate to say this because there's a lot of mainland people that are doing it the right way, but for the most part, in my opinion, you know, putting a 15-foot retic in a 6-foot vision cage is just not okay. They're extremely inquisitive animals. They need a lot of stimulation, which is why they're always moving and pacing back and forth and pushing and all these different things. And so they need stimulation and they need the right care. So I mean, getting into it, so like as far as like husbandry parameters, that's what you first were hitting on. Yeah, so husbandry parameters. So a lot of people, if you do a lot of research or you talk to a lot of people, they'll say a hot spot of 90 degrees. And then a cool side in the mid to upper 70s. I agree with that cool side on the mid to upper 70s, but I actually kept my hot spots at 86 to 88. I noticed that if I got to the 90s, they would pace back and forth a lot more. And I don't know. If you're ever going to have a heat malfunction and you're keeping your animal's heat at the top like threshold, if you have a 1 or 2 degree uptick because the ambient in the room goes up, not a good thing, because now you can overheat your animal. And that's one thing about retics is they're very susceptible to damage if you overheat them. Neurological issues, pushing, they can destroy their faces, all that good stuff. So 86 to 88 was my sweet spot for a hot spot, but I actually keep my animals fully ambient now. So I don't have a single external heat source. So for any of you that are interested in doing that, you can get a mini split in an isolated room, or you can get a oil filled radiant heater or whatever heat source. And you can keep your animals, you can let the cool time of the day in the morning at 81, and let it get up to 84, 85, and keep your animals at that. And I've been doing that since March now, and all of my females this year that I wanted to cycle have cycled. Everything is beautiful with ambient, no stress about having to check thermostats, all that kind of stuff. It's literally a complete life and game changer in terms of husbandry for my retics.
Yeah, man. And I think you're the one that got me on my thought process for ambient as well. Like when I first heard it out of your podcast, and I never thought about ambient for the retics,
Mhm.
but well, the babies are on heat because they're in my room. They're still under quarantine. I have this thing. It's got to be at least 3 months, minimum 3 months now,
Yeah.
before I bring stuff in here. So, but my girl that's been in here for pretty much her entire life, she no longer has heat. Um,
Nice.
the racks behind me keep this room at 85,
Okay.
which is ridiculous.
Yeah, that's warm.
Yeah. Um, it's a very small room, so that one professional rack provides a lot more heat than I was expecting.
Yeah.
Um,
The bigger the rack, the more heat that they're going to produce for sure.
exactly. So,
What kind of racks do you have back there?
so I have some old school PVC TGR racks before
Okay.
Eric went over to Sea Serpents.
Yeah.
And behind that, I have a 5540 ARS. So that thing puts off a ridiculous amount of heat.
I got my first 2 ARS this year. I have a hatchling rack that I'm procrastinating on building up, and then I have their largest size racks that I think they're like 5 feet long for some of my males. And fortunately, I don't have to plug in that heat source. But I was looking at the heat panels and everything, and I could only imagine how much heat they produce.
Dude, it's night and day. Like this time last year before I had it, I was like, all right, whatever. Like you would see me in a hoodie doing these interviews, and even right now, I'm just like, if I could, like there would be no shirt if I could.
I was gonna, when I'm in my
It's
snake
fun.
room, I mean, unfortunately, I have a humidifier and a dehumidifier, so with all the fans and the humidity, helps keep me cool. But that's the one downside of ambient room temps is you will sweat a little bit more.
So we got into the heat aspect of it. We got kind of into the humidity, but so we found the parameters. What's the typical setup that people kind of do for their retics, and what are some of the options that you have found more viable in your time with keeping retics?
Yeah, so when I kept my first couple retics that I got as babies, I went with just like a Target 28 quart weather tight, latch tote, and I put fake plants in there. I put nice bedding in there, and a bunch of hides in a water bowl, and I kept it on heat tape. And to be honest, I still don't think that's a bad route when you have a very small retic. That retics, um, I never once have had a nervous flighty baby when I was first starting because I think I always provided it a secure environment. And even if that secure environment is a tub like setup, as long as the size is okay, you can even go with a taller tub and put, fake branches and things like that in there. I know old school green tree python ways, and I did this with one of my retics is, you drill a hole and you put a coat hanger or a I don't know what they're called. Anyways, a coat hanger, and you put it through the plastic ones, and now it
Right.
has a nice place to perch. So, really, it's more about its ability to feel concealed when they're young. Um, and to be honest, like I would rather someone get a weather tight tote that is 2.5 feet by 2.5 feet, and that has some height and decorating it and doing it up than how most of the breeders and how and I do this myself for fresh hatchlings, but like the 6 quart tubs with just a hide and a water bowl, right?
Right.
So I will say now, like my fresh hatchlings, I have a FB10 ARS that I'm going to be using this year. I was using the 6 quart shoebox totes, and again, when they're very young, the most important thing when you're hatching animals is just getting them to eat. Right? That's
Mhm.
all you have to worry about. And sometimes if you go too big too soon, they won't eat. And so, but as my snakes grew, I went directly into a 4x2 enclosure, or actually a 4 foot long by 30 inches wide. I've always gone 30 inches wide anytime I've gotten my enclosures, um, and about 18 inches tall.
Is there a
Um,
specific reason for the 30 inches in your mind, or
I just,
is that
I,
just your comfort?
yeah, I just, if I, whatever. So there's different trains of thought, but in my opinion, like the bigger the better, right?
Right.
If for retics in general, the bigger the better. If you have a small animal and you put it in a large enclosure, just understand you have to have it completely decorated, concealed. You cannot have a 3-foot retic in a 6-foot cage and have 2 hides in a water bowl. You're going to have a defensive animal more than likely. You might not, but more than likely you will. And I say you might not because I genuinely think that retics are one of those species that each individual animal is truly different. Some will be okay, some won't, some are forgiving, some are not forgiving. So yeah, I think that with retics in general, the bigger you can go, the better. And the whole debate about like, and the whole idea of like retics like these small areas because they want to feel secure and blah, blah, blah. And anytime I move my snake into a bigger enclosure, it becomes a jerk and this and that. And I didn't really buy into that from the beginning. I had some mentors that tried telling me that, and it just didn't make sense to me. I don't know why. I did have one animal that would push no matter what if I kept it in an enclosure and it was happy in a tub, but that was one out of the 20 something odd retics that I've owned. And so you will have outliers and anomalies, but at the end of the day, I think this new generation of retic keepers coming into the industry are keeping really well, and they're trying to go naturalistic and get bigger enclosures and really give them what I think retics deserve. We all think that they're amazing, intelligent animals, so why not treat them as such?
Right. So what do you kind of do to stimulate them? Because obviously they very much hone in on a rhythm or a cycle of doing things, right? So like
Yeah,
whether it's your feed cycle or if you go to one side, like I've had to found that I have to switch sides on her every couple of times because when she smells food, she'll sit there and she'll perch where she knows the door's supposed to open on the
right,
side I've been feeding if I feed there too long.
right.
So you gotta find ways to keep them kind of guessing.
Exactly. I have one girl that just loves to like lay her head right on the glass of where I normally open to feed, and she'll just sit there for sometimes days. It's like it's not even close to feeding. Why are you doing this already? Um, but yeah, so number one, and this was a concept that someone told me that I never really even thought about. Hey, look, I'm in the chat. Um,
Hey.
what's going on, Nathan? Um, so yeah, so one thing that I never really thought about until actually someone at Arlington and the RBC told me. But so stimulation. A lot of people think that stimulating the retics means getting them out and handling them and doing all of that. But at the end of the day, in the wild, the most stimulating thing that a retic could possibly ever do is hunt and kill.
Mhm.
So feeding your retics is an abundance of stimulation. Outside of that, you definitely want to get your animals out more than just when you're cleaning. And fortunately, I got a garage setup that I did um, this year, and I was able to, I was blessed enough to do that. And so I have plenty of room. And so with snakes that I trust, I let them just kind of roam around. I'll put them in their holding bin, but I'll keep it open and let them just kind of move around when the weather is right here in Texas, which is like a very small window, because it's either way too hot or too cold. Um, I take them out in the backyard. Even at my HOA, I've already talked to all my neighbors around me. They know I have snakes, so it's cool. Take them out, give them some of that outside time. But really, like if you're into retics for the experience of keeping a retic and you're not breeding, and if you have a handful or less, like yeah, take your animals outside. Like, I mean, they're such inquisitive animals. Let them be a part of the family. Let them roam around the living room if you have the means to do that, and you don't have small animals, or you're not too concerned. But so just what I do, I let them roam around the garage. I'll keep them. I won't put the lid on the tub a lot of the time when I'm cleaning, and like I said, food and feeding them is probably one of the most stimulating things for their brain that you can do for your snake. And that's not to say go and overfeed and have an obese retic, but maybe feed it smaller meals more often to keep that stimulation going. Um, But yeah, to
Well,
what you said about feeding, I actually don't feed my retics as consistent as I used to, and that's not because of preference. That's just because of my busyness and my time, and I don't have 20 animals on a precise every day of the week. I do that, or any of those kind of things. Like I wish I could do that, but I'm going to be honest, I miss feedings all the time. But I've actually learned that keeping them on their toes and allowing them to be hungry for a bit and be active in their enclosure and pace and move back and forth as long as they're not pushing or hurting themselves is actually a good thing. Um, I like to see them stimulated and move around. If you have a retic that just sits there and doesn't do anything but just sit there, something's up, in my opinion. And I could be wrong, but yeah, I mean, if it's just
well,
sitting
it's
there,
like
it's
us.
yeah,
Like,
exactly.
I mean, if you feed someone enough that they don't need to move or they don't need to do anything, they're not going to do it. But is that really a life, or
No, no. So if you just have pets and these are your retics, I mean, like, you get a retic because they're retics, right? They're smart and they're active and they're beautiful. And so it doesn't make sense if you're just keeping them as pets that you would just keep them in an enclosure or a box and then just feed it once a week or every 2 weeks.
You know why that happens? I can tell you right now why that happens, because everyone's like, "Oh, it's smart and it's inquisitive and it gets huge and I love it." And then they go out and they realize, "Oh shit, this is more than I thought I could handle."
Yeah, then they're like, "Oh, this is what a feeding response means. This is what everyone told me." Yeah, so do your research. If you haven't bought one and you're wanting to, do your research and just make sure you know what you're getting into. They're phenomenally puppy tame animals as long as you are prepared for that feeding response. And you might run into the occasional defensive animal as it's young, but just keep working with it and be persistent and be consistent.
Most definitely, and I'm finding it out the hard way because she is just
Um,
now. Yeah, I saw that.
freaking
Just now into maturity. So I'll admit full-heartedly, I failed as a retic keeper. Like I've had a retic essentially since I started keeping again. It was one of the first animals we brought in, and I didn't give her enough space. I think I fed her enough, but I fed her like super small meals because I was like, well, I know like the size that you give them can really affect the growth rate. So I was trying not to do it fast. And like she's toned, she looks good, but she's just now. I finally got her into an enclosure, um, where she can really stretch out. She can do what she needs to do, and I'm seeing a full response from it now. And she's showing me the fact that okay, well, she's mature, and I think she might be trying to hint that she's ready because she's
growth spurt.
becoming much more food aggressive,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and it scares the bejesus out of me right
No,
now.
seriously. Yeah,
Like I'm not ready to do it, but I kind of want to do it just to say that I've bred retics one time at the same time, you know?
yeah.
Um,
Man, during that time of the year when I have females that are starting to get to that process of wanting to increase their food intake, feeding's the least favorite part of like I'd rather clean giant crap than have to deal with some of the insanely food aggressive animals. But yeah, DNT retics, you absolutely can buy a retic. I know that you don't have any
none,
DNT
none
retics.
whatsoever.
Um, but yeah, yeah, I mean, and with me working with mostly, locality and super dwarf animals, I have a manageably sized collection in terms of like the length of my animals. My longest snake right now is a Slayer, which is a dwarf. She's 14 feet. Um, as a pure Slayer, she's turning 10 years old in April next year. And so I have a heavier snake, that mainland that's on a breeding loan that's here. She's about 12 feet, but man, she's like 60 pounds, 70 pounds. She's a big, thick girl. Um, and so, in terms of just managing size and food response and that kind of stuff, some of them are fun. Some of them keep you on your toes, but that's the thing that I like to preach. If you're going to get into keeping retics, start slowly and really just try to, get a sense of what you're getting into before you decide to become an addict like most of us do, and just
That's the
jump
hard
into it.
part, man. Like, it's especially when it's a lot of ball python people, right? Like, I'm not bagging on the ball python people, but let's be honest. Like, most of the people that jump into ball pythons, we jump in because of the morphs. We jump in because of the money, the possibility of creating like these crazy things, and we have this mindset where more is better versus make quality and keep it small and controlled, right?
I roll my eyes with that.
Yeah.
But I mean that goes for any snake, because I mean, so I plan on furthering my education with my profession that I'm doing, getting a PhD, and I already know what my dissertation is going to be on. And I'm actually going to be talking to a local university to see if I could actually get reptile keepers in San Antonio's in for brain scans. But I have a theory that the same parts of your brain that light up and that are activated when you do things like cocaine or meth or something that's highly addictive, that drives up that dopamine. I have a theory that owning snakes and reptiles in general is the same exact way, because there's no one out there, because we're such a niche population, right? Like, we're weird. We like reptiles, right?
Right.
So we're a niche population that no one regulates and gives a crap if we have 100 snakes or one snake. If we have one snake, we're weird. If we have 100, we're really weird, I guess, right? But like, people who keep cats and dogs, you can't keep 50 dogs. Like, you're gonna be you're gonna have animal control. Like, no one's gonna let you do that. Um, and um, so I think we're not regulated in that sense with reptiles, and so we're able to go beyond what we can with mammals. And so I really do think it's the same mechanism of action in our brain that drives like cocaine addiction versus reptile addiction.
That's gonna be interesting, man.
So
I look forward to seeing that
if it proves
dissertation.
to if it proves to end up being confirmed through brain scans and studies, all of us are addicts. This is going to be great.
Well, no, that and see, that's what I was gonna bring up too, is like people with PTSD and what was it? PTSD and like other types of trauma, like
Mhm.
TBI.
Yeah.
The way your brain rewires itself after those incidents
Yep.
is it's kind of like an addict. So you fire off differently. So it it's something that kind of it's funny that you said that, man. Um, I'm not gonna lie, I've kind of given up on working with the VA, but I was trying to make snakes like a therapy animal through our local VA, but I can't get a hold of directors. I think we had talked about it one time.
I told you to go to
Yeah,
the Cohen
reach out.
Clinic.
Yeah,
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 I work here at the Cohen Clinic at San Antonio, and they have one at El Paso. They just broke ground, and they're making a whole new state of the art facility.
yeah. I'm gonna have to use you and
Let's do it.
get this right. But so they use horses, they use dogs, they use cats, and essentially snakes are put down as an emotional support animal. And but there's not a program for veterans.
Mm-mm.
And if you look within our industry, about I'd say a solid 30% at least.
There's a lot of veterans, man.
Yeah, are
I meet at least a dozen or so at every show that I go to.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it's crazy, man. So I really like to see what the science behind it is and see if it
Yeah.
does the same thing, because it means we're all kind of intertwining the same way, or maybe the human brain itself is figuring out a way to rewire itself.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And part of that study is also going to be discussing and talking about the positive effects of reptiles. I'm not just going to be focusing in on the addiction part, but actually focusing on like someone who likes reptiles. I would like to get a brain scan done and actually be able to observe it while they're holding and interacting with one of their animals to see what is being lit up in the brain. And again, this serotonin increase and this dopamine increase and these feel good chemicals that are in our brain that are going off is going to just lead to more evidence to support that these animals can in fact be calming. Because when we think about snakes, like in the therapy world, like as a therapist, if we're going to use snakes, it's probably for exposure therapy to get people to get rid of their fear of it, right? But they definitely for a large part of the population that keeps reptiles can definitely be a calming, enjoying. For me, someone who's got pretty severe ADHD, the best time and the most time that I'm ever focused is when I'm in my snake room.
Yeah, man. Well, I'm looking forward to it. I think there's going to be a lot of good stuff found from that study. I know with one of the things that they were talking about was like, and I tried to write a paper on this, and I'm not the most literate person anymore, but I wrote about how we use them for sensation therapy,
Hmm.
essentially. Like that's the way I use mine because, and a lot of people use theirs because you look at like the hug therapy and stuff like that, or the weighted blankets, and
Yep.
it's the same effect kind of when a larger snake or even a snake in general kind of holds onto you and coils around you and
Yeah. Who needs a
just
weighted blanket when you have a 30-pound retic?
right? But yeah, man, let's dive back into this stuff. So you're very much so a locality and a super dwarf fanatic.
Yeah.
What made you choose the locality side versus the morph side?
So, I mean, morphs are beautiful. Don't get me wrong. Like there are morphs out there that are stunning. And like we talked about the ocelot earlier, and like DNT retics. The little ocelot who's 12 months old is courting a mass, massive mainland female. But for me, locality is. I mean, okay, so it goes back to like that experience that we get to interact and connect with each of our animals, right?
Right.
So there's something different about a locality animal that just hits home for me. It's like it's bringing a piece of the wild into my home, and just to be able to know that like I have a snake from Kalatoa Island, I can literally search Kalatoa Island and know where those snakes come from. And to me, there's nothing more fascinating than that. Like, we sure we can trace back morphs and see maybe where they were imported from for some of them in the retic industry.
Mm.
Um, Still not even all that information's accurate, but they've been outcrossed and outbred so many times and crossbred and inbred so many times that for me, like let's see, out of the 19 snakes that I own, I have one wild caught, and then I have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So, including my wild caught, I have over half of my animals are first generation captive bred. So all of those just for me, just like again, that dopamine rush in my brain and just the ability to know that like these animals are not far removed. They're still domesticated because they're F1s. And they interact with me in such a positive way. There's nothing that's like more rewarding than that. And then when you just line up locality next to locality, you realize localities are morphs in and of themselves. They look so different compared to the next locality, like a Solaire versus a Kalatoa or a Ternate versus a Kayuwadi. There's just so much variation and difference. And for me, who was it? Uh, is it Scouty Poo, Scooty Poo? I don't who.
It's my wife.
Oh, okay. Hi. She mentioned Pokemon collectors. Like for me, localities like gotta catch them all. Like I want them all. And so you know, love the morph stuff and respect all the crazy morph combinations, but like I'll take an F1 all day, every day over. I'll even say this over an ocelot. Like if I was to sell, if I had to like, if something happened that I had to get rid of most of my collections, I would keep back all of my locality stuff and get rid of all my more stuff.
Yes. I can respect that, man. I think it kind of falls in with who who you keep your circle with as
Mhm.
well. I know a big thing that me and Ryan McVeigh used to argue about a lot is like even with the localities, and I think even Garrett had a part in this argument at one point was even though you're getting localities, you got to think like the paperwork on these localities aren't saying where these animals were caught. It's saying where they were shipped from. So even if you're getting paperwork that says just to throw it out there, Jampea,
Mhm.
it doesn't necessarily mean it was caught like right there on the island of Jampea. Like it means it was shipped out of there and then it was brought into the states. So you gotta really trust the person that's exporting, essentially,
So
or look for similarities. Like you said, you could see differences in the localities now.
yeah, so I mean, and that's the thing. We have to be careful in the industry and not just say like, "Oh, that looks like this, so therefore it is," because that couldn't be further from the truth. Because I can use a good example: Kalatoa, Karampa, and Madu. Right? We have very limited Madu and Karampas in this country, but we don't know the variation, how different they look when they're in the wild in different parts of the island. But in reality, those three localities that are Superdorf localities look 20 times more similar than they look different. So you
Right.
have to be very careful then to use the it looks like this versus so therefore it is this. But to your
So
to your
if it looks
comment,
like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's not necessarily a duck.
no, it could be a dove. um but let me so about what you were saying. So I actually like some of the paperwork on the Ternate Islands in Halmahera. Like Rodney is one of the only people that actually has proof of the paperwork that came from Bushmasters Cameron that he got them imported from. And here's the thing: is they say Halmahera and they say Ternate on there, but Halmahera and Ternate do not export. They don't ship directly from there. Mostly everything. And I'm not going to even make that statement. I know that a big place of the part where you export into the United States is on Sulawesi and
Mhm.
on different of the main islands. And so I actually think that there is, if people still had the paperwork, would actually say what locality they were. But yeah, I mean, like the reason why we always in the RETIC world, like always want to trace back to the importer because the importer's reputation is everything. And the way that that importer gets their reputation is how their relationship is built with the exporters. So, for example, I just talked to Cameron at Bushmaster on the phone a week ago, and I just asked him questions about the Halmaheras and the Ternates, about everything. And he said that he actually went on an expedition with two other well known people. I forgot their names in the 90s to Halmahera and to Ternate, and was one of the first people in the United States almost ever to go to these islands. And he scouted out his supplier, his exporter. He did all of that. And so when you talk about a guy like Cameron from Bushmaster, the guy's reputation, is solid. And that's because he actually travels, goes to these places, sets up key people to know, like he all the way down to the people who caught the animals. So, but to what you're saying, generally speaking, there has been, yeah, there when the U.S. stopped being able to import animals, um, it became a thing where people were like, "Oh, Kalatoas are hot, so let me just get snakes from these random places and just ship them in as Kalatoa." And that's where we can use some of those like identifying traits. Like if you send in a Solayer and you say this is Kalatoa, I'm gonna do this. Sorry, it's not true.
It's supposed to be PG, man.
Sorry, I'm so
No,
sorry. Gosh, blur it. Can you go back?
this is
um,
live. There's no editing. Sorry.
so sorry. Yeah, so there is a lot of doubt with the retic stuff because there were exporters trying to make a buck, those kind of things. So that happens. But if an importer with a great reputation gets animals that doesn't look like the animals that are supposed to be coming in, they typically should be doing something, in my opinion, to prevent any confusion. But that's why it's so important to just get as much information when you're buying locality animals, because the biggest scam in almost all of reptiles right now is in the Superdorf community, where people are like, "Hey, this is a pure Kalatoa," and someone goes, "Hey, I just bought this from a neighbor on Craigslist, and they said it's a pure Superdorf Kalatoa, and it looks like any mainland, right? It looks, and so you got to be very careful with that kind of stuff."
So let's let's jump into that aspect, right? I said it was gonna come. Um, Obviously, we know the perks of kind of keeping super dwarfs. You have a smaller animal. You have a little bit easier to handle, right? Well, in some regards, once you get them through, I think it's very much the handler versus the animal and how that
Mhm.
animal's handled, how they react. Um, why super dwarf over mainland? Because mainland has been the thing for so long. So what's the driving force to push super dwarf?
In my opinion, it's more about like just the ethics and morals behind everything. If you're gonna keep a snake that's 16 to 17 feet and you don't have a room for that snake, uh, right? Like versus a 8 to 10 foot super dwarf where you can get an 8 foot by 3 foot and it's like a mansion for that animal. And so and what a lot of people don't realize, and this is something that I actually like, I've always been told this and I've got the firsthand experience now that I have a mainland in my possession. So many people like hyper focus on length, right? Because like, if a snake is 8 feet and I'm 5 foot, it can eat me, right? No. So I think length is actually like such a false way to measure like a size of a retic, because I'll tell you what, like my 14-foot slayer is a breeze to work with versus this 11 and a half, 12-foot mainland that I have, because the mainland has her by about 30, 40 pounds. Um, I really think weight goes into it. And so, plus, if I'm going to be breeding mainlands and just generally speaking, like I think what happens a lot is these big retic breeders that keep mainlands. Um, I'm a fit dude. Like I'm not in my college years anymore, but like I can still lift weights. I'm still athletic, and just managing one adult mainland. Um, I
It'll worry.
sweat. I break a sweat. My back tightens up every single time. I got to wrestle this girl into her soaking tub because she's stubborn, man. She's sweet as can be, but she's stubborn. So when I had that first experience a few months back when I got this female in my possession, I had this like epiphany, and I was like, how do people that are breeding thousands of these animals, and we know who we're talking about. We're talking about the big mainland, big name breeders that everyone knows. Um, how do they do it? Like, how can you possibly keep that many large animals and you haven't hurt yourself to the point where you've worked like and so what
You
ends
don't
up.
have a crew. You don't have anything.
Yeah, and in my mind, it like this epiphany struck, and it's like I really think that the way that you do that is you neglect your animals. You clean them once every 10 days. You maybe give it water twice a week. You just toss it food. It sits in its pee. It sits in its poop. And to be honest, if you're keeping mainlands on a large, massive scale, it's unethical in my opinion. And again, there's a lot of mainland people that are doing this the right way. And this is not a jab. I talk to you guys who are mainland keepers that I have the utmost respect for. You guys know who you are. But there's a lot of people out there that are really neglecting their animals because they just have way too many. They don't have enough, humans to help and just take care of their animals. So again, if you have a sedentary retic who sits in one spot day in and day out, um, yeah, it's just so I think the reason why we're moving to super dwarfs is because it's more manageable. Um, and oh my god, is that Dax? Please tell me that's Dax
I'm
on
gonna
there.
say that's Tay. I
That's
hope
Tay.
that's
I
Tay.
dude,
I
Tay
100% hope that's Tay.
that Tay swole.
But
But
either way, like
when
I
it
love them both, but I
when
hope that's Tay just for the joke.
when it comes to
So here's one of the things, because we were joking on age, right? And you're still a very young, spry, agile young man. I got you by a few years, and a few kids, and once you get to my age and my kid count, then we'll talk about it. It is Dax. Dang it. So when you're working mainlands, there's got to be a point where you can't work them anymore, especially not by yourself. Like,
yeah.
and I don't recommend working a mainland by yourself in the first place, especially if it's over, uh, I want to say like 10, 12 feet, just with the way they'll get sometimes. I know when I worked Grumpy was, I think she was only like 14 feet, maybe 15, but she was a heavy bodied
That's
girl.
still a big,
And
yeah.
that's a lot of snake, and especially a lot of snake that has the name Grumpy for a very, very avid reason. She did not like people at all, and but I think that's the argument, man. Like 100% is it one, whether you want to keep them or not, whether it's going to be large numbers or small numbers. How are you going to be able to effectively care for these animals by yourself when you get a little bit weaker, a little bit older,
Yep.
just a hint slower? And it's the same argument that I had with HOTS, right? Like my mentor was like, "Hey, you got little kids, you got to get out of HOTS." And I was like, "Well, if I get out of HOTS now, I may never be able to get into them because I'm gonna hit that point where I'm just that half second slower,
Yep.
and I'm gonna be too slow for it." And I know there's people that read them and they're really great, but to learn how to work a different species
You got to
at
keep them.
an older age, it's very hard. And I was
Yeah,
like,
exactly. And I just one more comment about like just also why we're starting to move into the Superdorf world and everything, but like in the retic industry, there's not a lot of people out there that are very business savvy, and they start up these businesses, and if you actually just really think about it, like you know, uh, most of these people outgrow themselves to where, everyone always preaches like it's all about the snakes, it's all about the snakes. But once you grow to a certain extent to where now your livelihood it depends on selling these snakes, it's now your snakes becomes about I need to keep myself alive and feed on the table primarily, and then it's about the snakes. And so keeping super dwarfs and dwarf retics that stay much more manageable and small, from a business perspective, you're saving thousands of dollars a year on feeding, on enclosure sizes, on I mean, it's just realistically from a business standpoint, unless your business model is to try to produce the largest retics that you can, like Weston at Wildfire, dude loves the massive, and that's what keeps him ticking. But there's a lot of people out there doing mainlands that are like just they're turning and burning, and so at the pace in you're selling these animals for a fraction of what super dwarfs go for. You're spending
mhm.
5 times the amount on food, on enclosures, on facility size that you need to keep a bunch of them. It just now that we know there's manageable retic size out there, it doesn't make business sense on why people are being stubborn and not starting to downsize the mainland and increase the super dwarf stuff.
I agree.
There, free business advice for anyone listening.
So let's jump into the breeding aspect, man. Like you've this is your what, second, third year?
Yeah, so this is my third year. Yeah, so my first season didn't go well. I my very first, actually my first two clutches, they were the same pairings, but were wild caught animals. But my first year was not successful in the sense of, I mean, I got wild caught retics for the first time I've ever bred anything to lock up, to lay eggs. But there was a combination between some beginner mistakes I made, the huge Texas winter storm that blew out power everywhere, and then on top of that, I think my female was really just overweight. The wild caught that I had when I had just gotten her, I think that she was overweight, and so the combination of those three things, I only have one baby to show for it, and she's here with me. And even then, she's still a little kind of derpy. She's a pet. She's like, I'm keeping her more because it's just that was the first animal I've ever produced. And on top of that, a brand new bloodline of Calotoa is introduced in the US. So she's a pet here. And then my second year, which was last season that I sold the babies early this year, um, was a success. I got 16 babies out of it, held back 2, sold the other 14.
So that was, let me see.
Yeah, so that middle clutch right there, That was my wild caught Calatoa's female's third clutch. That's the one that she just laid. She just laid that clutch. And out of those 22 eggs, 19 look beautiful. 3 of them died off. She always has not had a very like a high percentage of success rate. I don't know if that's the wild caught in her, but no, her clutch is doing phenomenal. And so yeah, so this is my third season. I have her clutch in the incubator. I have the Coyotes, who's that middle picture. That's the female right there. No, that's the Calatoa. The one below, that's the Coyote. So I have hers that's hatching soon. So 2 pure localities. And then I have a pure Mindanao Philippine who I bred with a TK Calatoa. And she is gravid right now. And she's due to lay in about 2.5 weeks. That's that female right there. Nope.
Up
if you
one,
go
or-
up one, yeah. So that is the Southern Mindanao Philippine. And she was bred to a TK Calatoa. So I don't know if you can see there, but she's starting to have some follicular development growth there. She's getting really thick because they're a very, very lean locality. And so, yeah, I bred her to a pure Calatoa. So it'll be considered a super dwarf, 50% Calatoa, 50% Philippine.
No one saw that. No one saw that.
Yeah. So
it wasn't like shit. I had to like
and then my fourth and last clutch planned of the season is the one right there on the right, where that's a mainland pairing. So the ocelot to the tiger.
Okay. This one right here.
Yeah. So again, the money.
And that's the one you're doing with
Rodney. Yeah. So that's my ocelot. That's his tiger female. And again, the goal there is to try to prove that ocelot caramel.
Correct.
So yeah.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah, that's the Philippine.
I wish there was more pictures of that, man. That's a beautiful freaking snake.
It should be further down. You might have to scroll for a while. Not worth it, but yeah, I mean the ocelot is just one of those that is
it's eye catching for sure.
It's eye catching on pictures, but until you see one in person, man, you really don't know what you're working with. If I had to like explain, like, I don't know, every time I look at him, I just think of Batman. He's pretty awesome.
It's a beautiful snake.
Yeah. So this has been a fun season, man. It's my third season, and I'm trying to get 4 clutches on the ground. And it's been.
So is that going to be kind of where you want to sit? Obviously, it's a different mentality with retics, right? Like,
yeah,
they produce a lot more eggs. It's a lot more babies to move, and to ethically find them homes is
which I really pride myself in doing. Yeah, no, I agree. So yeah, I mean, at very, very, very most 5 clutches a season until I actually have a different building. And right now, only reason why I'm even doing 4 is because I have a high school helper. His name is Sean. Shout out to Sean. He's a RETIC Lounge Patreon member as well. But he is, I'm going to be paying him per snake that I sell, and he's going to be coming over 2 to 3 days a week, changing out the paper, feeding the babies, while I do the rest of my collection, feeding and cleaning. So I have someone to man the babies.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah. So I got some help already, and which has been great. It's kind of like an cool. He's 14 and he's taking out F1 animals, and he just fed the wild caught Calatoa on his own. And the kid is phenomenal. He's a huge reptile nerd. So to be able to kind of, in a sense, mentor him, he loves the retic stuff, and then to give him the I mean, if I was 14 and someone gave me the opportunity to do that, I would have been like, you don't even need to pay me. Like,
that's where I started, man. Like, so I volunteered in a pet store when I was 14, right?
Yeah.
In high school, I would walk across the street.
That's awesome.
After high school, and I'd work for free. I volunteered because I'm 14 years old. I wasn't old enough to be paid, right?
Yep.
Well, legally. So his way of paying me was supplying me with the animals that I wanted, the enclosures, all the goodies, right? And then my continued work was how I paid for the food.
Yep, exactly. That's awesome. I just kind of jumped into it as a kid. My parents were literally like, I love them to death, but like, you should never tell your 10-year-old son that you can have a Burmese python. Don't do it. Let alone from a place who imported 80% of their animals.
Right, right.
I had an
Yeah,
Argentine boa. It's my favorite boa species, and it died on me 6 months after I got it. And I'm pretty sure it was because it was an import and just didn't do well. But yeah, I one day I will have another Argentine boa.
I get that. So let's talk about the vetting process for you a little bit, man.
Yeah.
Because what do you what are you going through as far as your steps when you're looking to find that new home for one of your babies? Because that's one of the things, even with ball pythons, that I find myself doing. And there's sometimes where I'm just like, you know what, like you've literally showed me the cash in hand, but you're not going home with my animal. Like it's not to be a dick. It's I love the animals that I produce, and I just don't feel like you're ready.
No,
So we're gonna
I'm
hold
I'm I'm the same way. Like I still call the babies that like the people send me pictures on updates and everything. They're still my babies. Like I think Chris Sexton was on here earlier and he was talking. I saw him, but like his animals that he bought for me, it's still my babies. Like they, I love them that much, and especially because that was the first clutch I got to sell. But so fortunately for me, a lot of the people that bought the animals from my first clutch, I knew they were established retic keepers. I trusted them. I knew that their husbandry was great. And I'm not talking about like knew of them, like I knew them. Like I talked to them for probably a year prior to them getting some of my animals. But for those that I don't know, just do you have experience with retics? Great. I'll look at their page, see if they do have retics. And then, I mean, I asked them, like, do you have an enclosure ready? Do you have a thermostat? Like, I will ask them questions to make sure that my baby's not arriving the day that they're getting the tub and the thermostat and
right.
everything, and so, I'm very like one person, man, if you had sent me, if I knew you were asking this question, I would have sent you the screenshots. But this person asked me while they were trying to buy, I asked them, do you have experience with retics? They said, no. I said, that's okay. I didn't have experience with retics when I got my first retic and someone trusted me and here I am. And so I can work with that. But they were like, hey, I have cash in hand, blah, blah, blah. And I was able to ship at that time because weather was warm. And I asked them, I was like, all right, cool. Like, if it's okay with you, if this is going to be your first retic, like, I let people know, like, any issues that you have, come to me. Don't go online. You can go online, sure, ask everyone else,
Right.
but let me be your first line of defense because again, these are something that I hold sentimental value to. If your snake's life is on the line, I want to be the one to step in and try to help save it, right? And so I asked him, like, do you have a thermostat? He's like, oh no, not yet, but I'm gonna get one from Amazon. And again, Amazon has ink birds and they're good, they're not bad. Do you have an enclosure? Um, you know, no, what size enclosure should I get? And he was just there were red flags for me that my stomach was telling me no. And I said kindly, like, hey, I'm sorry, like I don't feel comfortable sending one of my babies off to you. Let me know if you're still interested next season. And the guy berated me and cussed me out and was a complete jerk. And at the end of the day, again, all worth it because I did not. I don't know, man. I don't like the idea of trying to go to sleep at night knowing that I sent my animal to someone who's not prepared.
Yeah, man. I don't know what it is, but there's just some like there's some people that well, rejects aren't for everybody in the first place. Like I think there's some people that have 10 plus years in the industry, have worked with multiple species where rejects won't be right for them,
Yeah.
regardless. But it's I think that's with every species though. Like I think we as an industry need to uphold standards a little bit more. Understand, yes, some of us do this for profit, some like strictly for profit. Not saying that we do, like, oh, but there are those that do this strictly for profit. There are those that do this as pure passion that are able to vet a little bit harder. But I think moreover, we all in the industry should be vetting a little bit harder than we do. Um, I know when I went to Odessa, um,
Good
The
old
first
Dessa.
good old Odessa. I love that show, man. It was such a good experience. I came back sick as a dog, but it was such a good experience. The first snake that I sold at Odessa, I spent probably 45 minutes with this couple because they're like, well, this is going to be our first snake. And mom was kind of scared and was like, well, let me get you over the fear. If nothing else today, let me get you over the fear. And then we started talking about everything, and I told them everything that they would need, and I talked them through everything, and they're like, you know what? We want that one. Let us go get the stuff. And so they went and they came back with pictures showing that they had purchased
Yeah.
everything and came back and they're like, all right, we're ready.
Yeah.
And they talk to me probably once a week right now, giving me updates on that baby. And
That's
now
what I want.
the bug bit them. The bug
Yeah.
bit them. They're like, we can't wait. We want to start breeding. It's like,
Right.
know your role, cool your horses. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. That's awesome. Let's make sure everything's going right first. Make sure you're ready.
And I mean, and if you want to breed and you're super gun ho and excited about it, like sure, breed, but just get another, like get a female. Like don't buy 10 snakes. Like breed once and then tell me if it's okay. But yeah, no, I totally agree. It was the moment that I asked that dude for pictures of like things is when he was like F you and blah blah blah. And I was the happy recipient of that. Like I was like, bring it, don't care. Like I think I sold that same animal 2 days after. So again, it's and I think a lot of the times because like you mentioned, retics have really big clutches. Even the super dwarf stuff, even a small animal is still going to produce 12 to 15 eggs. And that's double, sometimes triple the size of ball python clutches. So yeah, I mean, if you produce too many, guess what? You don't have time to do. You don't have time to vet every single person who inquires. And so it's this, I've always been a believer, and you can even ask Adler, who's in on the chat, Serpent Eclipse Reptiles. But like I've said this to like all the people who I'm close with, and that ask me questions about breeding and the business side of things. And let me get this straight. Like I'm not a snake business expert. This is only my 3rd year in doing this, but I do have a marketing background. I do have a business mindset, and the one thing that I continue to see be the downfall of retic breeders is growth. It's growth, because once you now get to a point where you rely on these snakes to pay for themselves and you get to a point where you're too big, you've shot yourself in the foot. Again, quality of the animal care goes down. You're sending them off to whoever's going to the highest bidder, right? You have an $800 animal and someone offers you $450 and you're like, shit, I need to pay for food next week. Sorry for my language again. But you're like, oh, I need food next week and I don't have food for snakes. So I'll sell it for $450. And now you're crashing the market because you just can't, right? So it's just, if you're smart in planning your business decisions, you don't have to worry about too much overhead or things like that. Because again, I'm transparent. I bred a pure Kalatoa clutch. I sold 14 babies, made $34,000 just with one clutch. Again, you can be profitable. And you made a good comment to the sense of like, some people do this strictly for money. I'm going to be 100% honest. I love my animals. I do it because I love them. Yes, I want to make money. I'm breeding them.
Well,
I'm
not saying that. Like, that's
like,
not what I was trying to get.
No. I know you were.
At all was.
No, I know you were, but I mean, if we're all being honest, if you're breeding and selling animals, yes, you want to make money. All of us want to make money. Okay. But that doesn't mean that it's still not about the animals first. Like retics could be illegal to send and ship and sell tomorrow, and I wouldn't get rid of a single snake I have. I love them, right? As long as I can afford to keep them, I love them. So yeah, I mean, yeah, vetting is something we need to do in the retic industry, because we're not just selling. And again, this isn't a knock on ball python people, but like if you make a mistake as a ball python keeper, you're not going to die. If you make a mistake with a 10-foot retic, and I say 10 foot because most of the super dwarf stuff out there that's crossed with mainlands going to hit 10 feet as females. I don't care what any breeder says. If you have a 50% super dwarf female, I don't care what bloodlines you're talking about, your female's going to get 10 feet unless you underfeed it. Because there's a big misconception that these super dwarfs stay tiny. right? Like corn snake size, and it's just, I don't buy into the hype. So they're still large enough to, if you make a mistake, you're going to pay the price. So yeah, we need to vet 100%.
Like it. So let's jump into your future and what you kind of want to do and where you want to take Lab Exotics, and then we'll jump into uh, your podcast as well.
Cool. Yeah, I want to
But-
burn Lab Exotics to the ground. No, I'm joking. Um, no, so man, I have a lot of support right now from my wife. Before I didn't. I had to write a 6-page or a 5-page business proposal to get her to buy these wild caught animals. And now that she saw the money come in from them this year, she's like, you do you. And I'm like, nice. So I have her support. I have her backing. So, man, where I would like to see myself, I'd like to see myself doing this full time, but also being a part-time therapist. I never want to stop being a therapist and working with veterans. That's something that fills my cup just as much as working with the snakes. So, but the reason why I'd like to do it full time is more time with my animals. Not to grow huge, not to get a whole new facility and have 500 animals and breed 1,000 animals. Not my goal. Again, it goes back to what I just stated, is being profitable enough to support my family and continue to make upgrades for my current animals. But so I'd like to have a total of 10 localities. I don't know why. 10 just sounds nice and good. I'm at 8 right now. If I can go more, cool. But so I'd like to be doing this full time to where eventually I can have another facility that's next to my house, right? Like eventually my wife and I are going to buy land. I'd like to build a nice bigger shed than just a 400 square foot garage. I'd like to double that size and only increase my animals by maybe 5 or 10, but have much bigger enclosures, have a section built into a walk-in where I can rotate female in, each week, and have a new female in the walk-in every week, so that they have a week to just have a 10 by 10 room that's naturalistic.
I like that.
And just and be able to really, what my aim is to use. So number one, my goal is just to be known as the locality nerd, right? Just to be the person where if people ask, hey, I want a locality animal and locality A, B, or C, they're like, oh, Lucas, right? Like that's my goal, right? That's where I would like to be. And then with the few morph projects that I have, I would like to use the locality influence to make those morphs look better than any of the other morphs, the same morphs that anyone else is producing. Throwing things like Homahera, Ternate, Philippine, Solaire, even getting like a Sula and getting the Sula color and pattern into and starting to shrink that down. And so for me, a lot of my projects are very long term. Because appreciate it, Jeremy. Yeah, I just for me it's yeah, that's kind of where I want. And then on top of that, I'd like to still see clients 2 days a week. And get my fix doing that. And just I'd like to be at home with the animals more, so I can be at home with my baby, and we'll probably have more kids, so I could again be there with them and not pay as much for babysitting. And probably, fiddle the line between child employment and have them help me and have them be my helpers. And they'll be like, why aren't I getting paid? I'll be like, you live under this roof, right? So yeah, that's the goal. I'd like to get to a point where I'm not this massive producing 200 animals a year. Just producing a comfortable amount of really good quality animals and still do some therapy on the side to where I can live happily ever after with my animals, my wife, and kids. We froze. I don't hear anyone. If anyone hears me or sees me moving. John. Did I freeze? Can any of you see me? Oh, okay, cool. Because I'm over here just like bouncing back and forth, but John cut out. Okay. Appreciate all the comments on here as well. Adler saying, love you, Lucy. Love you too, Abby. I'm just catching up over here on the conversation. Jay, don't spoil any of the UFC prelims. I don't pay any attention to any of the winning, and I go back and I watch them all. So don't do that. Don't tell me who won, what did. So someone asked me, any plans to get a Super Maluku? No plans to get a Super Maluku because I plan to produce them. I have 1.2 Ternates and I also have 1.1 Halmaheras. And Halmaheras are also, Northern Malukus. And I have plenty of Kalatoa and Kayuwati stuff. So Super Malukus are definitely on my plan to produce. I don't see the need to really buy one if I'm going to be producing plenty of clutches myself, but Super Malukus, or for those that don't know what that is, it's a Super Dwarf mixed to a Ternate. They are like insanely amazing looking. They look almost as good as a Ternate. They're kind of a little dulled down in color, but had the same crazy pattern. But they're just now shrunk down a little bit because of the Super Dwarf size. The Super Malukus are amazing. Rodney did a phenomenal job with that clutch. John, that's TMI. Don't want to know the KOs. Actually, no, I had a friend text me there was a big KO. So I'm excited. That means I got a fun night after this to watch some UFC knockouts. Welcome back to Outside the Clutch. We have John Feely as our guest.
What's up, dude?
What's up?
Jesus. I don't know what happened. My internet freaked out of nowhere and whatever.
I thought it was me for a second, and I switched from my Ethernet plug-in to my Wi-Fi, and then everyone said that they heard me. So
yeah, like my Wi-Fi looked fine, and then it just completely booted me out. I don't know what happened. I think someone's trying to hack into my Wi-Fi.
It's okay. Your wife is playing Scapegoat right now, so that's nice.
Yeah, probably. It's like, let's turn all the Wi-Fi off right now. But yeah, man, I think you have a really good plan moving forward. Kind of threw me out of my rhythm. Sorry. Give me a second. Anyways, so let's jump to your podcast. Sorry, I'm getting like all hot and bothered. I'm upset now.
That's okay.
I hate when that happens. So let's talk about your podcast. What kind of pushed you to create a reptile or a RETIC specific?
Yeah. So for those of you on here, if you're not subscribed to the RETIC Lounge on YouTube, I'm going to throw out my own shout out. So the RETIC Lounge on YouTube, on Apple Podcasts, and on Spotify. Go like, go rate, go subscribe, please. And to be honest, I'm not even really concerned about the numbers, and I'll talk about that in a bit. But back to your question. So what inspired me to do a RETIC specific podcast was the fact that I'm a RETIC keeper and there's not good information out there. Garrett's channel with Reach Out Reptiles is phenomenal. A lot of his informational videos are short and sweet and to the point. And the other podcasts that are out there for RETICs are great, but they're interview style with guests. Right. And so a lot of them have to do with things that are being talked about in the industry, and some of them touch on like the sensitive topics, things like that. And so I'm talking about for like 2.5 years now. In my mind, I'm like, I want to start this, but I'm not like, I'm a social person. and I come across as easy to listen to and talk to, and so it makes sense like for me to do a podcast, but like internally I had my own barriers of like, am I qualified to do this? Is I'm gonna come off sounding dumb, or maybe people will start to think I'm a retic expert because I'm by no means that. And I got in my head a bunch, and it postponed and postponed and postponed. And then it got to a point where I was like, you know what? Um, what if I try to find someone to be a co-host with me and we have an informative retic podcast that's a conversation like basis? Because in my opinion, podcasts like what you're doing, having people on and asking specific questions about what they do is how people learn and get a lot of information. And so I didn't want to do 10-minute videos on instructional stuff because there's plenty of that out there. I just wanted to have a deep conversational topic of retic specific things so that new keepers and new breeders could learn from my mistakes, from my co-host Nathan's mistakes, or could hear what we've done successfully, but not just like in a step 1, step 2, step 3, but just chill with us, listen to us talk and shoot around. And because really, like, if you look on Google and you type in like how to breed retics, or you type in my retic is doing this, what do I do, you get some information on YouTube that's like 8 years old. And then when you go on Google, Google's still telling you to keep your retics at 92 degrees. And it's like, okay, so there was a big gap that I saw. And so I reached out to Nathan, and me and Nathan were close in the sense of we knew of each other. We connected through Garrett's Patreon. Um, and I just knew that I really liked Nathan, and that he had some breeding experience. And I was looking for someone that was kind of on that same level with me, to grow together and work out the awkward stage of growth together. But ultimately, we just wanted to, once he said yes, we started defining what we wanted to do. And ultimately was to just try to build a positive support for new breeders, new keepers, and also have a place for experienced people to come in on interviews if they want to join our Patreon and provide expert level knowledge and information. Now, we haven't had any expert level like people who have bred for 10 years on our Patreon yet. I'm hoping to try to get some people on there. But yeah, so when we've done this, we kind of struggled at first, like, hey, numbers aren't growing, we're not getting the subscribers, and we're not at 1K. But then I realized that, like, a lot of people have podcasts and they have these fluffed up numbers. But when it comes to actually those numbers turning into views and turning into likes and turning into people who actually value the content, I stopped caring about the numbers because,
Right.
I want more subscribers, but I never plan to make YouTube a monetization thing. If we get there, cool. But at the end of the day, my goal and Nathan's goal and our vision for this is, if people want retic specific information, that they can Google it and her video is going to pop up and they'll be able to watch an episode of good information. And so hopefully we've been hitting that. I see a lot of positive feedback in the chat so far. So I appreciate that.
So I say it all the time, and I think you guys did a great job. I love how open you are about the fact that you are both still new breeders. And the fact that you even consider yourself new keepers at 5 years in. So I think that's huge. The humility goes a long way, man. I think a lot of people let their egos blow up a little bit faster than they should. Not saying that's a good thing, that's a bad thing, whatever. I thrive really well with your energy. I like what you guys are doing over there, and I wanted to commend you on it. The
Appreciate it.
numbers thing, man, I've been doing this for 5 years. Like, I can tell you right now, YouTube can be very easy or it can be very hard. It's all upon the time that you want to put into it or you don't want to put into it.
I got no time.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Like, you got to think until this past year when I finally looked at my wife and I was like, look, I've been doing this for 5 years. Like, if I'm going to, it's not that I need to be paid to continue to do this. It was, I've been doing this for 5 years. I want to step up my game.
Yeah.
I don't want to keep the same
It was a personal
thing
thing.
for 5 years. Yeah, it was a conviction on myself. Like, I need
Yeah.
to step it up, and I need to find a way to build the community and do something for the community. And so, like, with the sponsorships, like I said, the sponsorship money goes to USARK. The money that I'm hopefully within the end of this month going to be making off of YouTube, because I should hit monetization this month.
I saw that. Congrats, man.
So that's going to be bringing people to events with me. So,
Nice.
like, in my Discord right now, I have a running contest, and whoever's the most active in my Discord is getting a free VIP for them and one guest for Arlington at one of the shows next year. And then
Nice.
we're going to do a live sit down podcast with that guest. So like it's all finding ways to give back to the people around me and the people that support, because like my bills are paid. I'm not worried about anything. Like, could I
Yeah.
grow more? Could I use that money? Like, we could all use money, but how do you give back? How do you really support? And that's where the monetization factor came in for me. Was, well, how can I use this to benefit those around me versus just myself?
Yeah. And that's where Nathan and our Patreon is going. Right now, me and Nathan, everything has been going back into it, from stickers, sending out thank you cards, from from just getting the gear that we needed to even do this. None of the money that we've made from the Patreon has been pocketed for personal use or even for our own reptile stuff, but it's mostly we want to get to a point where me and Nathan could get together, be able to fly to certain places, do shows together, bring people, and do exactly what you're doing. So I never once have I ever cared about being a YouTuber. That's not my goal. Like, if people like want to call me a YouTuber, great. But like, at the end of the day, I'm giving back by just trying to provide good information for the RETIC community, because there's not a lot of good info out there.
I agree.
Todd, I really appreciate that, man. I get emotional just hearing, man, me and Nathan get messages weekly and daily on what we're doing. And it means so much to both of us. I send him every single comment. He sends me every message. And it's humbling for sure. We never thought that we'd get this much positive feedback. And so we could be at 300 subscribers for 10 years for all I care. But if those 300 subscribers are listening to every episode and gaining knowledge from it and giving us good feedback, that's what's filling my cup up.
Thank you. I like that, man. So let's talk about that Patreon. Like you said, it's not for you guys. It's for the betterment of the Patreon members. And how much pushback did you get when you first said, "Hey, I'm just starting this"? Because that in and of itself, like Patreon in and of itself's a huge, and I'm not gonna lie, it's one of the things that's kept me from doing it so far. Like,
Yeah.
I very much am aware of how it would have benefited over the last year, but at the same time, I'm like, what am I gonna provide for these people to say, okay, well, give me your money?
Yeah.
In a sense.
So man, our so zero kickback, to be honest. Like,
awesome.
We started off our Patreon in our first month, we had 20 members. And I think it goes back to the idea that we're just trying to build a community. And so the Patreon is an extension of the community where you can now be a part of it, right? So this is the
Right.
RETIC Lounge community, a positive community where we're going to discuss positive things on the podcast and just develop and grow all together. Come join our Patreon, where we have a Discord channel, and you can all connect with one another. We have Patreon members that are in Korea. We have a good amount of activity on our Discord, people sharing pictures, sharing experiences. Some people don't even own a RETIC yet, and they're on there, which is like a beautiful, that's exactly what we wanted, right? It was a community where people who don't have RETIC experience, who want to know what it's like. So it's that continuation. Now, Nathan and I being really busy, we've been slow with providing additional content, but we have everything planned out. And so Nathan and I are going to start taking time out of our week to just do short 10, 15-minute videos of hot topics that are in the Discord and talking them out loud on Patreon that we necessarily don't have plans to do an interview for. We are going to start bringing on our interview guests to our Discord live chat. So we meet once every other week, so 2 weeks a month on Fridays. We do a live where people can ask anything. We can talk. We've had some very good meetings where people ask questions and we answer them in terms of keeping retics. We've also had just chats where we're all just messing around, having a good time. We're at a point where, we've had a couple weeks in a row now of 10 plus members showing up on our live. But we also plan to drop videos of our personal collections, videos of us doing our cleaning, doing our handling, just kind of backseat access of the day in the life of breeding and keeping a larger collection of retics. And so a lot more is going to come. And really for us, I guess, like, to get people to buy into this community aspect, to see the value of it, is it's not an expensive Patreon. It starts at $5, $10, $20, and $50. We have no one on the $50 level. I think we have 2 on the $20 level. We have maybe 7 or a handful on the $10 level. Most of our people are at the $5 level. And again, this isn't about monetization and making money. We just want an extension of what we're trying to provide, which is a positive community, to be in our Patreon and on our Discord.
Okay, man.
We have a couple Patreon members, I think, actually on the chat right now. So if you guys want to provide feedback on how it's been, go ahead and do that. But I think so far it's been great. Every single one of the Patreon members it's been amazing on the Discord channel. And again, just part of that humbling process that I did not expect. We're at 29 patrons right now, and we're 3 months in. Like that's crazy. Like I thought at this point we'd have like 8. And I honestly thought, like, 3 months in, me and Nathan were going to have a conversation. Should we just delete it? Like, should we just refund people their money because no one's gaining anything from this? But no, it's been, so my comment to you is, you got a good supporter, you got a good following, you have a really good podcast. Do it. Just find a vision of what you want the Patreon to be about and do it. The people who love this show, including myself, are going to back you and support you.
I appreciate that. It's definitely something that's weighing on my mind. I want to make sure I have, with 3 kids and finishing up the bachelor's and all that, I'm trying to figure out how I can integrate it on top of this. So
yeah.
One of the things I wanted to talk about before we start wrapping up a little bit is your focus on your episodes.
Mm-hmm.
So you guys are essentially walking down, in my view, you're walking down the ladder of what you need before you start keeping, which I really enjoy. What method do you guys kind of go through, or what do you do to decide on what the topic should be for each individual episode? Is it something that's going on in, like, your personal lives, or is it something that you ran into before you started breeding, or how do you decide what you need to talk about on those episodes?
So when we first started, we had a long list of different things that just would be good for retic, aspiring retic keepers or retic keepers and breeders to be aware about. So the way that we've kind of organized things is we have like a husbandry segment, a husbandry playlist, where we're going to go through all of the husbandry topics that we can think of and talk about. And again, what's cool about our podcast is that it's a conversational, experiential based episode. And so again, we're not cutting it down to a dry 5-10 minute step-by-step thing, which provides us depth to be able to just provide people insight that you won't get on a 10-minute instructional video. So we break it down into a husbandry segment, a breeding segment. We have our one guest a month to talk about, and I really tried to focus, like, with each individual guest, to have a purpose behind it. And so, like, we just did an interview that's going to be dropping next week with Jake Klotz, and the chunk of the bulk of that episode, of the purpose of it, was he's a very family oriented person. So just his experience of keeping large mainland constrictors around kiddos and the kids cutting the eggs and the excitement that brings, and how we're growing the next generation of retic keepers. Right. So we try to be very specific with the guests that we have on. And so really, like, a lot of the inspiration of the informative episodes that we do just come from on like, what was I Google searching 2 years ago? What am I still asking my mentors now? And just putting out as much information out there. Now, me and Nathan are both aware that at some point the informative content is going to start running dry and being difficult to produce. So we're aware of that. So we're already trying to plan what's the next phase of the RETIC Lounge. Do we bring on more interviews? Very specific type of stuff. We have a new segment, locality talk, that we, instead of just me and him breaking down each locality ourselves, we're picking a breeder or a keeper that keeps or loves that locality to just enhance that conversation. So yeah, man, I mean, there's been a lot of thought that goes behind it, but really in terms of what we've already produced, it's just been things that I see that's lacking. I'll even go on YouTube sometimes and like type in something and see what's out there. And if I see that it's lacking, I'm like, let's cover this. Like, we're going to be doing an episode on shipping. And so me and Nathan we can get winded. So, which is good. I think it provides in-depth conversation. And so we can, like, the episode that dropped this week was on, what did we talk about? Pushing. We somehow managed to talk about pushing for 50 minutes somehow, some way. So it seems like once the ball gets rolling, we got plenty of information to put out there on each episode.
I like it. I will say, it's one of the things I think I've said to both of you privately. I've never said it it's funny when you guys start interjecting on each other.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things, it made me notice that I do it a lot to my guests. It made me more self-aware. So thank you for that. You bettered me.
Yeah.
But I do find it as a comedic relief in yours, kind of, because you guys will look at each other like I wasn't done yet.
No, all the time.
So
And again, it goes back down to, this isn't like a professional thing. This is like the way that I wanted, and I visioned this, and I've talked to Nathan about this, is like, I just want this, like, I love shooting around and talking to people about retics, and I just want to make it available. And so if I'm on the phone with someone and they're asking me questions and everything, they interrupt me, I interrupt them, and it's part of that it's just a natural flow of conversation that I think is I think necessary for it to be organic and genuine content.
I 100% appreciate it, man. Like, it's a real conversation versus where you feel like it was scripted out, and you're taking that brief pause so that the next person can start.
I do the editing. I do the editing, and I go there, and
I would just let it run free.
And that's the thing, is like, I sit there and I struggle with myself for 5 minutes paused on a video. Like, should I just cut that whole thing where me and him talked over each other? And I battle myself every episode, but I'm like, you know what? No, because if I do that, there's good content that we miss out on. And I try to do minimal editing, and not because I'm lazy, but because I want it to be as organic as possible.
No, I like it. I think you guys have a great thing going over there. I very much look forward to the new episodes. The link to that is actually down below, and when we post the audio version, it'll be down below as well. So make sure you guys check it out. Man, I've kept you for almost 2 hours. I appreciate all the insight. I appreciate getting to know you a little bit better. I think there's a lot more we could go in depth on. I got babies to put to bed, though.
Yeah, no, do what you got to do, and
let us know how we can get a hold of you, or if we're ready to get vetted by you for a future RETIC. How do we reach out to you, brother?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, like we just mentioned, subscribe to the RETIC Lounge. If you need to get a hold of me personally, I'm available for questions almost 24/7. But at lab_exotics_ on Instagram, and on Facebook, look up Lab Exotics. I'm the black little logo that has the green lettering and white lettering. And then shoot me a message. I'm pretty open. I give my number out to like the second time I talk to people. So if you have questions and you want to inquire on a clutch, anything like that, I used to do waitlist. But after trying to reach out to 60 people on a waitlist for Calatos and only 6 of them turn out, No more wait lists. So first come, first serve. If you're interested in an animal, just follow closely on my Instagram or Facebook. I'm posting there all the time, multiple times a week on progress on eggs, babies, pairings, things like that. So if you have questions about any of it, I'll give you as much information as I can. As you can tell in this podcast, I love talking. So yeah, I'm more than happy to answer questions you guys have.
Heck yeah. All right. Y'all, put your hands together. Give some love to Mr. Lucas from Lab Exotics. We're going to let this man go, and we're going to do our outro real quick.
Appreciate you so much for having me on. Awesome thing that you got going on here.
I appreciate it, brother. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, y'all. I hope you enjoyed this week. We threw 2 videos at you back to back. So everyone that showed up, whether it was for me, whether it was for the guests, I 100% appreciate y'all. Hope to see you on the next ones for sure. Make sure you're going down and you're subscribing. You're giving that love. It means a lot to us. He's got so much good information. I really wish that we had dived deeper. I was just kind of enjoying it for what it was. Like you'll see in the future, I think you're definitely going to see more of Lucas on this channel. There's definitely a lot more that I would like to get out of him. But y'all have a great night. You have a great weekend, and we're going to see you next week with another ball python breeder. And hope to see you there. You guys have a great weekend.